We're gonna go over strength training for gymnastics, and we're gonna start right now. So the first thing we have to do is identify all the crazy stress that goes into the human body when we're executing specific gymnastic movements. Okay, there's gonna be a lot of sprinting at high speeds, a lot of deceleration. There's gonna be a lot of pressure on the shoulders from various positions. Let's think about being on the bars. Let's think about even the rings and the pressure that that leads to. High speed movements where we take off and then we're doing handstands. This all leads to a ton of pressure on the shoulders, so they have to be very, very stable. We also have to have great ankle stability, knee stability, especially in men. There's a lot of inefficiencies that might occur when men start to land. They start to favor a specific way, they start to rotate, and then when they ground, they lead to these catastrophic knee injuries, okay? So we also have to think about with women. Women struggle a lot with wrist issues, elbow issues, and again, lower back pain. So these are all from all the high performing movements, all these crazy high-end, technically challenging movement patterns that they're executing over and over again. They're chronic use issues, but they're also just high stress. So when we're thinking about strength training for gymnastics, we have to look at how can we alleviate any of those issues? How can we help improve performance by alleviating those chronic issues, by alleviating or preventing those catastrophic injuries? So that's gonna lead us into those 4 key factors that we can use for strength training for gymnastics. That first key is unilateral work, okay? So any type of exercise where we can focus on one arm at a time or one leg at a time. And typically what I like to do is take an individual. So let's say they do specific landings and they always favor one leg over the other. That is when catastrophic knee injuries will occur. So if you identify that that is happening, that they're favoring, let's say, the left side over the right, what we need to do is strengthen that right side. So we can do slow eccentric single leg squats, slow eccentric step ups, walking lunges favoring that right side first and then doing the left side. If we have someone who favors one shoulder or one arm or one side of their body over the other, and this will happen in every single sport, not just gymnastics. In gymnastics, they will always favor that one side, but if we can narrow that gap, that strength inefficiency, that structural stability, that structural balance, if we can just narrow that to the slightest degree, that's when we can still prevent those big injuries from happening. So if we can use dumbbells in pauses, okay, so we can do neutral grip presses with slow eccentric, work on that stability on that one side. If we can do dumbbell rows specific to that one side, maybe they have a lagging shoulder issue. Now we can start to zero in on those different positions. Even sled work, that's going to improve the efficiency of their body, and in turn, they're gonna perform a lot better out on the floor. And that's gonna take us into that second key factor, which is actually focusing on bodybuilding type movements. And I know a lot of gymnastic coaches are probably putting their hands over their ears, but we know for certain that wrist issues can be alleviated by high rep bodybuilding style movements. We also know that shoulder work, if we can isolate the shoulders, we can do dumbbell external rotations, we can do Ys on the incline, we can do things like meadow swings. All of these bodybuilding style exercises, all of these isolation style exercises done with higher reps, done even with higher sets, and improving that hypertrophy, that joint hypertrophy through that mechanical load will lead to greater stability. So we can isolate what specific joint and what side of the body that specific gymnast might be struggling with, and now bring in a specific movement. Again, dumbbell external rotation. Let's work on that shoulder stability, that shoulder strength. Let's do 10-second eccentric. You've got a little bit of a banged up shoulder. Let's do 4 reps with a 10-second eccentric to try and improve that shoulder stability. That's gonna improve their overall performance and ideally lead to a healthy overall recovery. Same thing with women with a lower back. I recommend having a semi-rounded back, okay? When we're doing something like reverse hypers. So we can take gymnasts who are constantly almost in that like pelvic tilt style area. And they also do train in that hollow position quite a lot. But gymnasts typically do not hold a hollow position and train their lower back. So that's where I believe a lot of these bodybuilding style movements can come into play, is that if we can get our women to hold a hollow position and train with reverse hypers, train with glute ham, okay? Train even with glute ham rows in that hollow position where they have a semi-rounded back. That's going to improve the structure of their lower back, and in turn, they're gonna have less pain. When they have less pain, they'll perform at a much higher degree. That third key factor is going to be mechanics around deceleration. So I like to use movements like plyometrics, okay? So let's say we do a drop lunge that's unweighted. Let's say that we do a hurdle hop where we pause on landing. Let's say we do a jump step up where we pause off of the box, or a jump lunge pausing in the split position. I believe that when we train that deceleration aspect, okay, when we can train those mechanics, it's going to lead to a better takeoff. And in turn, we can start to work backwards. Let's start with deceleration, that final plant position before we take off. Now let's work backwards, 3, 5, 7 steps. Let's work on running mechanics. Let's approach running mechanics a little bit more soundly, but at the same time, we can start to understand the arm swings, okay? We can start to study other sports like long jump, high jump, and pull from those areas and start to think about, okay, how can we take the science and the research around the high jump or the long jump and apply it directly into the floor routine or apply it directly into the vault? Now that's going to lead to better mechanics in those specific events, and ideally greater longevity. That's going to lead to greater performance, greater technical precision, and in turn, better understanding of the sport. And now the athlete's going to start to understand their body a little bit better, and they can continue to improve in training. So the mechanical aspect, the deceleration aspect, that's stuff that I recommend doing in the gym, and then trying to bridge that gap between the floor and the gym by using things like plyometrics and decelerating as rapidly as possible, and then try and educate the athlete on how those positions and how those mechanics will transfer over to their actual sport. Finally, that fourth key factor is going to be working on weightlifting movements, and that means specifically power clean, hang clean, low hang clean. If we have healthy shoulders, I even recommend doing power snatches, high hang snatches, anything along those lines. There's a couple key factors, okay? One, you're gonna learn how to decelerate and absorb that energy when you catch a clean. And if you pause and stick it, that's gonna be similar to when you're landing and you're coming off the bars, when you're coming off the beam, when you're coming off of these positions at a very high speed. It could be something that we're training when we do a power clean and catch it as fast as we possibly can. Now we can start to learn what that feels like, not only at high speeds when we're in the gym, but also with high load when we're in the weight room. So one of those key factors is actually using those weightlifting movements. Now we can start to even think about, how can we strengthen the lower back? How can we strengthen the knee joint? How can we strengthen the ankle? Okay, so now we might do something like PVC pipe walks to warm up, really try and work on dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, okay? A lot of men tend to blow out their Achilles, okay? That's a fact in gymnastics. They have a very high degree, a very high rate of torn Achilles. So if we start with PVC pipe walks, we start doing things to strengthen the entire ankle joint prior to doing weightlifting movements. That could even fall under those bodybuilding style movements. Now, we're gonna focus on dorsiflexion and plantar flexion at high speeds. And while we're doing that, we're focusing on the deceleration mechanical aspect of the weightlifting technique. Okay, so that will transfer over to the gym. So the big key factor is that we want to use all 4 of these types of protocols to prevent Achilles tearing, to prevent the ACL from being blown to bits, to prevent shoulder fatigue. And that stuff's still going to happen in the sport. That's the nature of the sport. But if we can diminish that and pull that back a little bit, it's gonna make that gymnastics individual, it's gonna make that gymnast more effective at what they're trying to do. And that's exactly what we did inside of our app, Peak Strength. What we did is we took all of these principles, we took these 4 key factors, we put together a program so that when you as an athlete, you can go into Peak Strength, pick up the app at peakstrength.app, and you can enter in all of your information based around your own training and your own training success and failures. And then we take that algorithm, we put everything together and we spit it right back into your palm so that you can effectively become a more improved gymnast. Until next time, guys, if you want to be a freak, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.